people who do bad things get rampant success, just as people who do great things can oftentimes have no success. When we frame our tenuous relationship that has now fallen apart and someone leaves a law firm, whether you invite them to leave or they leave on their own accord, the idea that life is going to go out and get them is really a negative perspective. It's a desire to see something or an outcome that is negative about another person happen to another person. And that, of course, isn't a healthy mindset at all. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Crushing Chaos with Law Firm Mentor, where today's episode, we're going to be talking about no fucks given, why lawyers stop growing. So I'm excited to talk to you about this topic because growing is something that we are very committed to here at Law Firm Mentor. And one of the things that comes up a lot, and a question I get all the time when lawyers are reaching out inquiring about our coaching services, is what exactly would be the thing that you would say differentiates the lawyer who comes in, crushes it, follows the pattern, follows the process, kicks everything off their list and just, nails it, versus the lawyer who comes in, makes a good effort, does everything they're supposed to be doing, but ultimately doesn't get over the finish line. And there's always the lawyer's answer, it depends, but there is a categorical answer that I think most people are looking for, which is that the person who decides that they're going to grow and they're going to accomplish their goals no matter what, that person is somebody who falls into the category of no fucks given, right? So we're going to talk about what that means today and give you a little framework for how you too can adopt the mindset of real success when growing your law firm. So one of the things that I have the pleasure of doing here at Law Firm Mentor is I spend a lot of time with our mastermind. Our mastermind is for those law firm owners that already are at the 7-figure mark or beyond. We have several clients in our mastermind who are in multiple 7 figures. And one of the things that comes up a lot is mindset, right? We go into strategy, we go into tactics, we go into the finances and the people aspects. That's really where the focus is in the mastermind, because there's so much to growing that you have to have achieved in order to get to 7 figures that really becomes nuanced when you get larger. But the people become much more significant when you are in a multiple 7-figure entity. And of course, understanding numbers and using numbers to your benefit and using appropriate tax planning and strategy, appropriate financial controls, those become much more significant when you have more money at play. So we talk about those things, but really in the mastermind community, it's an opportunity for us to dig deep into who you need to become in order to successfully sustain growth at the level that you desire. And one of the things that comes up a lot when we talk to our mastermind is what's going on in their world. So I will share a little story that came out of our most recent mastermind conference. I won't attribute it to any one person. It was kind of a conglomeration of a multitude of different people's perspective and issues that they had gone through. So there is no one person that this story belongs to. It's kind of an avatar of our mastermind. But we all have experienced, myself included, having that one employee who just grates our nerves. And a lot of times that nerve grating employee is another lawyer, and lawyers oftentimes have difficult personalities because some of the things that make us great at lawyering make us not the funnest humans to have at the cocktail party, right? We all know that lawyer who wants to correct the 47th paragraph on the 68th page of a document, right? And they want to correct it by using a word that they prefer that doesn't really change the meaning, but it's just their word versus your word, right? Those lawyers who feel the need to redline emails and send them back with their commentary, right? Now, these people, these lawyers that we're referring to, oftentimes are strident and difficult and insist on having their way because they have a fundamental belief in themselves and a prioritization of themselves over other people. And we oftentimes refer to that person as rude or self-centered or selfish. And that's part of the reason why a lot of lawyers, when they think about growing a law firm, they think they don't want that because they think that being rude or selfish or self-centered is the way you accomplish great things in business. Like right now, we have a major political shift going on. And there's a lot of discussion about it kind of around the clock. If you turn on any news channel, you're going to see breaking news about the most recent events happening out of the current presidential administration. And when they talk about it from the perspective of change. And people are reacting and responding to, is this a good change? Is this a bad change? Or is this change putting us at risk? And I want you to think about how the experience of change ultimately implodes for a lot of people and causes them to have such a negative response to the idea of change that change becomes inherently bad no matter what it is, okay? Now, there's a whole lot of subconscious reasons why change can be very triggering, and we're actually going to do a whole episode about how change is triggering. But for today, I just want you to contemplate for a moment the idea of change being difficult, right? And that change in its being difficult can oftentimes present challenges that we see as kind of innate in the idea of change, which causes a lot of law firm owners to recoil and say, you know what, I don't want to make that change, because there's an association there. So when an employee comes along who oftentimes can create a difficult interpersonal dynamic in a law firm, right? This person might be rude and disrespectful, or it might be more insidious than that, right? Some examples of bad behavior can be a lawyer who undermines the authority of the owner, right? The owner says we're going to do X, and the employee goes off and complains to everyone that X is not the right way to go and that we should be doing it differently, and then ultimately convinces people to start doing it differently. Or sometimes we get what I refer to as the empowered narcissist, right? And I really shouldn't use the word narcissist, because as a divorce attorney, I assure you, everyone thinks their ex is a narcissist. 1% to 2% of the population of the world fits into the category of narcissistic personality disorder. But nevertheless, everyone thinks their friend, neighbor, ex is a narcissist, right? But if we just think about the idea of the entitled employee, right? I'll take narcissist out of it. The entitled employee who feels that their way is the best way, the only way, the preferred way. That oftentimes that person can create a hostile environment, right? So the owner is over here setting the tone, setting the course, talking about the things that matter for the success of the company. And the employee is over here saying, oh, that's wrong. That's not right. That's not how we should be doing things. And really putting doubt into the minds of the other employees. Or perhaps that entitled person becomes somebody who really has a lot of great ideas and they just have a little acerbic edge to them. So maybe what you want to do, or what you're thinking is the right way of handling that person, is to maybe redirect their energy and focus into something else, right? So instead of this person is really frustrating me because they want to change things and they're constantly complaining about the way we do X, Y, and Z, maybe I'll give that person a role. Like, here, if you want to change something, we're not going to just change it. You have to give me a plan and a protocol that you would prefer to be used. And I want it very thoroughly researched, written out, give me some metrics associated with it. And then we can talk about it and then perhaps run a trial of your way of doing things and see how that works compared with our way of doing things, right? So you're trying to build up the person even in all of their frustration. And yet what ends up happening, the person kind of takes off, runs amok, runs rampant with whatever freedom you've given them. And then they just start locking and loading new policies without your knowledge or consent, right? They didn't come back to you and say, we're going to try this out. They just said, hey, the boss let me do X. And so now we're going to go create this new policy that we're going to use. And it's my policy. And here it is, right? There can be a lot of that type of undercutting, backbiting, taking over. When you have someone who really feels that they are not in the station of life that they should be in. And so a lot of times this type of attorney will ultimately leave and go start their own law firm, right? They're not getting what they want out of you. They've asked you, however they've asked you, and you've said no for whatever reason, even if you explained it to them. I appreciate your coming to me with this idea. We really can't do that, because they feel put upon. They feel less than, because you have not given them what they wanted. And so their way of dealing with that is often to go off and create their own law firm. Sometimes they'll go off and go work for someone else, but oftentimes they'll just go create their own firm. And when that happens, sometimes they'll take employees with them. Sometimes they'll leave on their own. Sometimes they'll leave in the middle of the night, right? So even before you get a chance to invite them to leave. And sometimes they will leave in a blaze of glory, right? They will meet with you. You say, listen, this is not working. I want you to go find your success somewhere else. And next thing you know, all of the clients that they are assigned through your law firm are getting communications from them, soliciting them to go elsewhere. And even though in many jurisdictions, if not most, that actually constitutes unauthorized, unethical solicitation, because they are still your client at the time that the lawyer is soliciting them. Nevertheless, a client has a right to choose the lawyer of their choosing. And so oftentimes, if they're assigned to work with someone, they're going to choose to go with them wherever they go, right? So you have these people that will come into your world and oftentimes make life as a business owner, a law firm owner who's trying to lead a charge and lead people in a positive direction, feeling very frustrated. And when this type of person shows up and creates whatever level of friction that he or she creates, there is oftentimes a reaction of, oh my God, the last time I hired somebody, this crappy thing happened. They came in, they ruined my culture, they took off with my clients, and now I'm terrified of ever hiring again. And we know that there are different responses to that. We know that the reality is, if you are working in a world where there are humans, you are going to have unfortunate negative experiences because humans are not infallible. Humans can have good morality, bad morality, can have good ethos, bad ethos, can be a good, well-intentioned person who just make a mistake because they navigate poorly, right? And that's just kind of the nature of being with humans. But because we oftentimes associate other people's behavior as something done to us, and we internalize that we attract those types of people, we then say, okay, people, bad, no more people, right? And that causes us to stop growing, especially when you're in the business of selling the talents of people for a living, right? That's what we do in a law firm. We are a body shop. We sell bodies. Not in the literal sense, not the oldest profession in the book sense, but in the sense that we are selling the talents of people, the thought work of people. And so people are involved, at least at this day and age, right? We don't yet have AI attorneys or robot attorneys, even though I know a lot of people would love that. We don't have that yet. So we got people. And people present challenges. So I want you to think about this idea. And this has kind of been percolating with me for a while because I just remember being with my mastermind clients. And I actually remember thinking back on some of my previous attorney hires and the attorney that is uninvited from the party and then starts their own law firm, and some of the thoughts and feelings that it triggered for me. So I'll share some of them with you. And I want to just ask you if this resonates. So have you ever had an employee leave and had the thought, well, the trash took itself out, right? You can have someone resign and you otherwise, were working with them, having conversations with them, maybe even building up this person, right? You may have thought this person is going to be the next best manager of your firm, or this person is going to have a high status career because they're going to be able to come take over some things for you. You may have even thought at some point there was going to be an opportunity for them to buy equity in your firm. And then, lo and behold, they leave. And sometimes that can trigger a feeling of, well, there was something about this person that wasn't right for my ecosystem. The trash took itself out. And sometimes when we have those thoughts and feelings, it sounds like a good thing, right? It's like a kind of like a stick it to you, but also empowerment of me at the same time. And that feels like we're doing ourselves a service by framing it that way. But if you think about it, if they were truly trash, then why did you have them in your law firm in the first place? Was it that you knew they were trash and you were willing to subject the rest of your law firm to trash? Or was it that they really weren't trash in your eyes? They were really great in your eyes, and they just simply rejected you by virtue of leaving. And rejection, of course, feels negative for most people. For some people, worse than others. And oftentimes we will have a feeling of, well, I need to defend myself and think greater of myself because something that I thought great of, or someone that I thought great of, is now leaving me. So rather than feel like I've been rejected by something good, I'll say I've been freed from something bad. Not the healthiest reframe when you really think about it, but a lot of lawyers will think about it that way. Here's another one. Here's another thought that oftentimes comes up. So instead of the trash took itself out, a lot of times people will say, karma's a bitch, right? This person left after disrespecting me, being nasty to me, gossiping around my company and saying awful things about the company. They needed to go, but because they left and doing bad things or engaging in bad behavior, life is going to get them. Karma is going to get them, right? That karma, that bitch is going to get them, and they're going to fail. They're going to fall on their face. They're going to fall flat because bad people aren't rewarded in life. But the real truth of it is that people who do bad things get rampant success, just as people who who do great things can oftentimes have no success. And I want you to think about that, because when we frame our tenuous relationship that has now fallen apart, or our strong relationship that we thought was strong really wasn't so strong, when those relationships sever and someone leaves a law firm, whether you invite them to leave or they leave on their own accord, the idea that life is going to go out and get them is really a negative perspective, right? It's a desire to see something or an outcome that is negative about another person happen to another person, right? I want you to suffer the way you made me suffer, or I want you to have a downfall the way that you are causing me to risk having a downfall by your leaving. And that, of course, isn't a healthy mindset at all. Not only is it not great that you are wallowing in negativity and thus wanting something negative to happen to another person, put the morality of that aside for a moment. What it really does when you say that, like this person is going to fail, is that you then start investing your thoughts, your ideas, your energy in the concept of the person failing. And what happens if they don't fail, right? What happens if someone leaves your law firm and becomes rampantly successful? They leave your law firm and build a statewide reputation or a national reputation if they have a federal practice, maybe even an international reputation, right? What happens if the person leaves your law firm and becomes rich beyond their wildest dreams? They either went to go work for somebody who pays them 3 times as much, or perhaps they left and went to work for another employer and then ultimately landed on their feet owning their own law firm. And then their law firm is out there directly competing with yours, right? Sometimes that happens. It is not anywhere near as common as I think a lot of lawyers fear. A lot of times, the person who stuck around to be an employee, you can discern whether the person truly has the entrepreneurial opportunity gift, skill set that you needed to cultivate in yourself in order to be successful. Right? There are some telltale signs of employee mindset versus owner mindset. And we've talked about that before. But let's assume that maybe it was just suppressed, right? The person didn't step into the true essence of who they are until they were just fed up with you and your law firm and then decided, hey, I got to go do this on my own now. And then they really rose to the occasion. What then? Where does that leave your ego then? Where does that leave your feelings then? Are you going to feel differently about yourself if the person leaves and fails versus the person leaves and succeeds? And ask yourself, why does it matter? They're gone. They're not in your business anymore, right? They're not in your physical business. They might be in your business. I don't know about all that, right? But they might not be in your physical business anymore, and yet you are still giving them energy. So I want you to think about why it is. Why do we even spend our time and energy thinking about people that have left? Why do we not just send them on their way and say, hey, so happy for you to be starting the next chapter of your life. Go leave, right? Go leave and go make the best of yourself. Some people might even leave your law firm and not give you the basic courtesy of a goodbye. Thanks for the memories. Thank you for the opportunity to work here. They might resign to your office admin and never talk to you, right? Why do you care? Why does it matter? Well, I'll give you a thought around some of the things that came up, and we were having this discussion recently roundtable. And again, I was very much included in this discussion because as a law firm owner, I've experienced this before. One of the things that I think we have to look at in ourselves when we have that thought about the now former employee of our law firm is we have to ask ourselves why it matters to us. And oftentimes the answer is one that doesn't feel so good to hear, but it's the reality of the circumstance that many times it's that this person was able to do something that we were not able to do. Now, that doesn't mean this person was able to go start a law firm and make it into $10 million overnight, right? I'm not talking about the outcome of starting their own business. I'm talking about how the person moved in your presence that bothered you so much that you are still giving them thought. It could be that the person adopts the very mindset that you have to adopt in order to be truly successful. And a lot of times, law firm owners will feel resentful that someone else had that presence of mind to be that person that they are working on becoming. And what is that person? That is what I refer to as the no fucks given person, right? The employee who's willing to tell you to your face, I think that's a stupid idea. I don't think we should do that at all. You might think, oh, I would never speak to my employer that way when I was someone's employee. Or perhaps it could be that the person says whatever they need to say to your face and then goes behind your back and gossips to other people. And you might be thinking, how low level a human is this, that this person is off saying all these horrible things about me that they never could bother to say to my face. Well, oftentimes that person is not saying it to your face because they are playing the game of employment, right? They're trying to keep their employer happy, but they are also very much speaking their mind. And maybe you're a person who struggles with that. Maybe you think, hey, when I'm in court, I advocate hard, right? I go hard for my clients. When I'm across the negotiating table from another lawyer, I have no problem saying my client is absolutely entitled to and asserting every potential opportunity for a gain for the client and every reason why. Back of the hand, back of the napkin, you got it covered, right? But when you are asserting your own interests, somehow that voice gets a little less strong. Maybe you shrink a little bit. Maybe you fall back. Maybe you don't raise your hand. Whatever it is, oftentimes when we see an employee who triggers us, who makes us frustrated and annoyed that they would have the audacity to speak to us that way, or the audacity to have a different opinion than us and then share it with other people, oftentimes it is so challenging for us because we know that that person gives no fucks about how we feel, or perhaps gives very few fucks, right? That person is in prioritization of self. That person thinks more of themselves and their interests than they think of you and your interests. And how many law firm owners do we speak to every day at Law Firm Mentor that struggle with that? Whether they identify it as that or not, that it's at the core, the quintessential essence of the internal struggle, right? Because for most law firm owners, the reason why they seek coaching is not that they don't know how to write a business plan or create a marketing strategy that's successful. There's the intellectual thought of I need to learn how to do this thing, but you can ask ChatGPT and it can tell you how to do the thing. Why is ChatGPT not a good replacement for really solid, strong, foundational coaching? Pretty simple. Because at its essence, what coaching facilitates for you, what it allows you to do is to do the thing that you are not doing on your own. Even though you know you need to do certain things, you're not doing them. And it could be because no one's watching, right? No one's holding you accountable. But oftentimes it's because there is some mental block that you have that is stopping you. Whereas you look at other people and you say, that person gives no fucks about me whatsoever. And they have no problem ramroding, running roughshod over me and my authority in my company. Why is it that that person is free and I'm not free? Well, the reality is you are free, but you don't recognize it. And you are not making the choice to be free. So when you see that other person who so cavalierly can just step in the direction of what they want, they have no problem demanding a higher salary than you think that they're entitled to. They have no problem telling everyone in the building that they have the most brilliant idea and it's not your idea. They have no problem saying that they are the best in show, even if you think that's not the case. Because frankly, to them, it doesn't matter what you think. Because again, they give no fucks. It only matters what you think. And if you prioritized in your life and in your business what you think, you would probably have a lot different outcomes than you currently have. But for most of us, the idea of prioritizing ourselves over others feels selfish, rude, disrespectful, right? We have this moralistic perspective that we are to prioritize everyone else before ourselves. And once we grow out of that, some of us, when we become more self-actualized, we say we should at least prioritize ourselves on equal footing with everyone else. But here's the thing, you're not on equal footing with everyone else, right? If your best paralegal calls in sick tomorrow, or God forbid gets hit by a bus and dies tomorrow, you're going to replace them. If you, the sole owner of a law firm, get hit by a bus tomorrow, there might be some functions that can be replaced, but ultimately, if you're gone, this business is going to go, right? Your estate cannot run a law firm, right? Your estate does not have the same authority that you have. And assuming that whoever is appointed on behalf of your estate, well, let me not go down this road because this is getting into estate planning, and I'm probably going to have somebody on to talk about that in the context of what we do as business owners to shore up our estates and our asset that is our business. But for right now, I just want you to think about the idea that ultimately your law firm is the encapsulation of how you feel about yourself. And if you don't prioritize yourself over everyone else, then oftentimes you end up with outcomes you're not happy with. And sometimes you're not even aware of how unhappy with them you are until you start reaching for more. You start reaching for more because you say, I really don't want a law firm that only generates X. I want a law firm that generates Y. Or I don't want to just practice in this area. I want to practice across the country. I want to practice across my region. I want to practice all throughout my state, whatever it is. Or it could be, I don't just want to be in this practice area. I want to be in many practice areas. I want something big and grand, and I want to have a legacy that extends beyond my one practice area. But you don't step into that because you oftentimes have spent so much time making sure your employees are happy at work, making sure that everyone feels highly compensated, even if you don't believe that they have earned the compensation you're paying them. Even if you don't have the economic ability to pay bonuses, you do it because it feels good to have other people think highly of you, even though it's to your economic destruction, because you're not prioritizing yourself. You're not prioritizing your business, you're prioritizing others. Now, I am not suggesting that you should be indifferent to the welfare of the people that you are ultimately employing. Morally, if not ethically, and certainly from a duty perspective, people have signed on to work for you on the premise that they are going to receive certain benefits of employment, right? That's an exchange of value. And in order for you to be in integrity, you have to honor the exchange that you agreed to make with a person. But when you make decisions about what you are going to create going forward, what you're going to tolerate from people, what you're going to create in your business, what you're going to allow into your space, oftentimes it is through the lens of how will people feel about me if I do this? What will people think about me if I do this? And long term, will my feeling and thinking a certain thing lead to others feeling and thinking the same thing? I want people to believe what I believe, feel what I feel, etc. Even if you know you have no control over that, that's what you desire. So you spend all of your time and energy stacking the deck, thinking about how to cater to other people. And many times that can lead to success, at least on some level, because you can ingratiate people to your well intentions, and you can oftentimes get people very loyal to you. But you don't build a business on loyalty alone. There has to be sound strategy, and oftentimes that strategy comes with you creating what you desire, and that may mean that some of those people in your ecosystem aren't going to be there anymore. They're not going to think highly of you anymore because they have a different value system, and you have to be okay with that. And for many of us, we're not. But when you get to adopt the no fucks given mindset, when you say, hey, even if this person has a different perspective than me, and that may ultimately prompt them to leave my company, they have a different desire than I do, that may prompt them to leave my company. They have different goals than I have, and that might prompt them to leave my company, whether you invite them to leave or they invite themselves to leave. You have to be okay with the fact that there is simply not a match, right? And the lack of match doesn't make them wrong. It doesn't make you wrong. It just means there's a lack of compatibility. Now, I obviously am not endorsing being tolerant of people engaging in criminal behavior, unethical behavior, immoral behavior, etc. There is right and wrong in the world, okay? Not suggesting that there's not. But when someone is creating friction in a company, it's often because they are not a fit. And the more you try to spend your time and energy trying to fix them into a fit in your company, when what you really need to do is simply prioritize yourself and say, I give no fucks about this person's priority to do X. I want Y. And if they're not willing to do that, we're not a fit and they need to leave. If we don't adopt that as a universal premise, that what I am primarily motivated by is achieving the best that I can for myself. When I am self-actualized, my business will be amazing. And the people who are a fit for what I want to create will show up. But the people are not going to show up if I got Shitty Susan over here in the corner who really is not a fit for my company, right? If this person doesn't belong here and I keep them here, I am blocking the blessings of whoever is supposed to come into my space and supposed to be on this path to create my vision with me. And oftentimes when we see someone who is no hold bar going in their own direction, even though it is not our direction, if we feel triggered by that, it is oftentimes because we recognize that we want to be as free as they are to simply give no fucks. All right, everyone. I am Allison Williams, your law firm mentor. You have been listening to another episode of the Crushing Chaos with Law Firm Mentor podcast. I will see you on our next episode.